Hi everyone, this is Ryan from Gold Leaf Scientific, and I'm going to be talking today about steam distillation of terpenes. So why is this important? It really comes down to what's unique about the plant. When you think about a cannabis plant, the cannabinoids themselves are rarely unique. For most strains, what you'll find is that it's either really THC dominant or really CBD dominant, and not a whole lot of in between. That isn't to say that there are unique cannabinoid profiles out there, but they tend to be sort of rare. But when it comes to the smell or the essence of the plant, there's a million shades of gray. Every strain, every plant, every phenotype is going to have small little variations in the smell. So it's fairly easy to have a unique smelling plant, but it's pretty hard to have a unique cannabinoid profile plant. This is important because market forces tend to commoditize. This simply means that people try to group things together and try to associate a price based on that group. When it comes to the cannabinoid profile of plants, you could essentially group the plants into either being THC dominant or CBD dominant or maybe other. But it's too difficult to create large groups based on the smell. And this is because small variations in the smell itself can cause pretty drastic overall effects. But this only works with certain essence or certain strains, profiles, etc. For example, a lemony or a citrusy smell is really easy to recreate, whereas a very earthy, skunky smell is really hard. And when you think about it, and artificial flavors, have you ever smelled a strawberry that smells actually, or I should say, it's an artificial flavored of strawberry that smells actually like the real thing? I haven't. I don't think it exists. And there's a very good reason for this. When you think of a smell, think of a sound like a symphony. Certain pieces may have only a few instruments playing and may be pretty simple, whereas other pieces could incorporate all the instruments in the orchestra. Attempting to recreate the sound of only a few instruments is easy, but in order to create the sound of a whole orchestra, you need a whole orchestra. What this means is that simple smells that are only composed of a few dominant terpenes, like citrus smells, are cheaply and easily recreated, whereas other smells may have such a complex mixture that recreating the smell is just economically unfeasible. In short, it's going to be a lot cheaper for you to extract the essence from a strawberry instead of trying to recreate the whole smell. And the same goes for the cannabis plant. There's just certain strains that are just almost impossible to recreate. By extracting the terpene profile from these plants, you are capturing the true essence of the plant itself. Distillation. And basically the way it works is that you would put water in your boiling flask here. The boiling flask would sit into a heated hot plate or stirring mantle. Then you would place your material, your plant material, up in the bioflask here. Um, as the water is heated and turns up to steam, it rises up through the plant material. It forces the terpenes along with the steam to flow up through the still head and over to the condenser section where it condenses. It turns back into a liquid and flows down this section here and into a receiver flask. And once it goes into the receiver flask, what will basically happen is the terpenes are going to float to the top and the water is going to sink to the bottom. And then from there, you could use a pipette or a separatory funnel to separate the two. A key point to the steam distillation process is to keep your temperatures low. Generally, you want to keep your vapor temp and your water temp below 60 Celsius. Now, water at atmospheric pressure boils at 100 Celsius, so you're going to need to use a vacuum pump to reduce the pressure enough to make it boil at less than 60 Celsius. This is really important because if you allow the temperature to increase too much, it'll start to degrade the terpenes and give it a grassy type of smell. And because we're extracting the terpenes, you could, of course, dry out the material and do your solvent extraction afterwards. You could also potentially extract from live plants or wet plants, but in my experience, this tends to more easily degrade, and it's a lot easier for it to take on a grassy smell. So I generally like to use dried material. I find it just much easier to use. Make sure you store your collected terpenes well. Keep them at as low as temperature as you can. If you could flush out all the oxygen and insert some inert gas, that's even better. If you leave them exposed to the air, they tend to develop a kind of a pickle smell. This will happen in your glassware too, so it's super important that you clean out all your glassware really well after each use. It's interesting to note that terpenes are part of the plant defense system. In fact, it's just one of the many different defenses that a plant may have and use. When it comes to defending against bugs, plants use trichomes and terpenes to defend themselves. Although most people would pronounce it trichomes, the correct pronunciation is trichome, the root word meaning hair. So the trichome is an evolved hair follicle. The base or the stalk is often mineralized and hardened, and the tips contain cells that secrete terpenes and other plant compounds. These could serve to aggravate or impale a bug. Sticky and viscous liquids could cause the bug to be trapped. Once the contents of the trichome are released, the scent may trigger predators. This may attract a wasp or some other type of predatory bug to kill the defender. Similarly, when it comes to mammals, the plant has found a way to mimic the scents of other predatory animals. The picture over to the right is called a maned wolf. Its urine happens to smell a lot like cannabis. This just may be a coincidence, but I believe this to be a case of mammalian attraction of predators. If a deer happens to graze on some cannabis and releases the smell of it, it would attract predators. It's not so far-fetched considering that bugs happens the same way with bugs. On the micro level, plants also battle the same very problems that we battle. Bacteria, viruses, fungi. Plants have to deal with these problems too. They use a host of different chemical compounds to achieve this. And terpenes tend to be a very all-encompassing plant defense mechanism. Most of them tend to be antibacterial. They hurt or cause death to viruses and fungi as well. And when humans use terpenes, it usually tends to have a positive effect on human health. But you have to keep in mind that plants have developed these tools for specific reasons. Oftentimes, these tools tend to be very powerful. Sometimes they are toxic compounds. Certainly, they happen to be toxic to most bugs, so don't become complacent in their benign nature. There's a type of bush that grows in California, and terpenes that are in the plant material that fall off the plant and collect on the ground are very high in a specific terpene, a terpene that is toxic to all other plants except for the plant itself. This causes the bush to kill all surrounding competitors and to fill in its space with its own. Sometimes even environmentally stressful conditions can cause an adverse shift in plants. Sometimes during a drought, plants may produce a large amount of terpenes or some type of toxic compounds to prevent grazing. This can cause otherwise benign plants to become fatally harmful. If you're doing any type of solvent extraction, chances are you're losing a vast amount of your terpenes. This is because as the solvent distills away, it carries the terpenes with it. Again, a significant fraction is lost. Terpene percentages as high as 10% are easily achievable as long as the terpenes are extracted first, then a solvent extraction is done on the cannabinoids and the resulting terpenes are added back in. By splitting your extraction into two parts, you're saving what would be left. This not only means that your yield is going to be much greater, it also means your extract is going to be unique and flavorful. In fact, I would say that the unique effects associated with that strain are likely due to the combination of terpenes present, as opposed to the cannabinoid profile. So the old assumption that sativas are going to have more of an energetic high and indicas are going to have more of a sedative effect is likely incorrect. In fact, it's most likely the terpenes that are giving it a unique. All the terpenes and the cannabinoids work together to create a synergistic effect. This is often called the entourage effect. And basically what this means is the combination is far more powerful than any single component. This is because the non-polar nature of the terpenes tend to make it much easier for the cannabinoids to cross the blood-brain barrier. So a small amount of terpenes added to the cannabinoids can have a significant effect on the potency. A raw terpene-less distillate may only be about half of the strength as a very terpene-rich extract. So make sure you save the terps. This is Ryan from Gold Leaf Scientific signing off. If you have any questions or anything, enter in the comment section below. Feel free to email or call us anytime. And make sure you subscribe to catch our fresh new videos.